Hi everyone. This video is for my English speaking brothers and sisters in Western countries and local students who normally speak English. So what I'm going to tell you is basically about the third book. This is the third book. This is the third book. It's very interesting. For me, I think the third one is the most interesting of all my 3 volumes of Colloquial Tibetan Grammar Book. And this one is the first volume. This one is the first volume. My students at Manjushri Center of Tibetan Culture, they used this book for the class, so it got very old here. So the first book, I'm going to tell you briefly about the first book. The first book has 218 chapters or lessons, or 218 grammatical rules. Just in this first volume, there are 218 grammatical rules, and it has 277 pages. 277 pages with 218 grammatical rules. It's very interesting, like hypothetical sentences. If you are not a language teacher or a linguist, you may not have heard this term hypothetical. Subjunctive. Like in English, we have all those hypothetical sentences. Subjunctive. Direct speech. Indirect speech, and passive, active. We were not taught in our school systematically. So we use this grammar in our day-to-day life, but we are new to all these terms: hypothetical, direct speech, indirect speech, passive, active. So if you are going to learn a language, you must learn the grammar first. Most of the Tibetan, they speak 2 or 3 languages, but they have learned them by listening to others. They don't know the rule, they just repeat what others were saying. So if learning language is very interesting subject, very, very interesting. It's very profound. So when you study a language, first you should know to which language group does it belong to? Is it Indo-European language, or is it Tibeto-Burmese language, or is it Anglo-German language? And from there on you get rough idea of the grammatical rules. So, and then the second book, this too is interesting. All of these are interesting. And then let me see, here it is. Now the second volume has the second volume has 215 grammatical rules. 215 grammatical rules. And the second book is basically on involuntary verbs. The first volume is basically on voluntary verbs, and the second volume is basically on involuntary verbs. And then it contains all the sentences with some doubt, like with 90% certainty, or expression with 70% certainty, or like just 50% certainty. You too have this in English. So it seems it will rain. It appears it will rain. Maybe it will rain. So we have many more to express ourselves with some degree of doubt. So the second book is basically on involuntary verbs and statement with some degree of doubt. And this is the third volume. Is seal packed in a plastic cover, so it can't be damaged by rain or water. It's seal packed. And this book has a grammar related to relative clause. Relative clause. Relative clause is a way of making sentences in which you can combine many simple sentences into one sentence, and it's called relative clause. Like in English, we do have relative clause. So relative clause is very important. Like instead of saying 3 or 4 simple sentences, we can combine them all together and make it into one long single sentence. So basically it deals with relative clause. This is my classroom. I planted these flowers so that my student would feel like they were in garden, or like to make them feel like coming to the class. Okay, now I'm going to open this seal. It's very nicely packed. And then it also has literary Tibetan grammar. Most of the students who had been to Tibetan school, I'm sure they have memorized the rule. But I also know that very few of the students know how to use those grammatical rules. So I have explained all those literary Tibetan grammatical rules in a very simple way. Even a child can understand the rules. And then the 7 cases. 7 cases. In Tibetan we say Namye Dün. And why 7 cases are introduced? What was the purpose of making the 7 cases? And idioms. Idioms is very much part of speech or a language. And then ume, and then kyukik. And it contains 3 short stories in spoken Tibetan. Very famous stories are written in spoken Tibetan. This is special about this book. This is the 3rd volume, and this has 300 pages. This is kyukik, like shorthand, if I may call it. And how many grammatical rules are there in this book? There are 133 chapters or lessons or grammatical rules. And then relative clause. Most of my Tibetan brothers and sisters have never heard such grammatical terms before. If you are interested in learning Tibetan, you must know the grammatical terms and to which group of language it belongs, and then it's much easier to learn the language you want to. So here, okay, relative clause that, relative clause which, relative clause which present tense, relative clause which future tense, relative clause where, relative clause to whom, relative clause whose, and then adverbial dependent clause who, adverbial dependent clause when. It's very interesting. It's not that we don't use this rule, we use it, but most of the time we don't have any grammatical term for these rules. And then Adverbial dependent clause, how, related to noun. Adverbial dependent clause, how, related to verb. Adverbial dependent clause, how, related to adjective. And there are 3 stories. The literary Tibetan is written in Uchen, spoken Tibetan is written in Ume, and the English sentence in middle. So you can learn literary Tibetan, spoken Tibetan, and if you are someone wanting to learn English, you can also learn English at the same time. And then and there are some illustrations. This is a story written by Leo Tolstoy, and this illustration was made by one of my Russian students who teaches Tibetan in Moscow. So she knows the landscape in Russia, so it must be pretty much like this 100 years ago. This illustration was made by the Russian lady who teaches Tibetan in Moscow. And this illustration was made by one of my colleagues, Gen Gurmela, a very busy man. Sorry. And this is, the lesson is, the name of the story is The Last Lesson. Kind of situation we Tibetan had gone through and still undergoing the situation. So the name of the story is The Last Lesson. Very interesting story. And then I wrote the story, The Last Lesson, in Kyugik, in spoken Tibetan. So this one of my students is using it with lots and lots of her initials on the book. We finished with this book, the first volume, and we are studying the second volume. We are on the page here. She has marked all those words. We covered 100. So we covered 117 pages from the volume 2. So, yeah, so the way I teach is completely different from the traditional way of teaching. Completely different. We were taught at school that there are only 3 tenses: past, present, and future. But in fact, there are as many tenses as there are in English language. Past perfect, past continuous, present progressive, simple present. You ask any Tibetan teacher, they will say there are only 3 tenses. No, there are as many tenses as there are in English. About 12 tenses, if not more. He has finished is one tense, is present perfect. But in Tibetan we have 2 ways of saying. He has come, making an assumption, and we have he has come attestative, like you saw him come. So he has come can be said in 2 different ways. One as assumption, like now it's 10, he should be in the office, so you can say he has come. And you can say he has come because you saw him enter the office. Yes, so it's completely different from the way you have learned Tibetan, completely different. So one of my French students learned to read Tibetan in 13 hours. This is a way to teach. Like, you can't make her learn the way you have learned, the traditional way. It will take very long. You have to find out. There are many hidden rules. You have to dig those rules out and explain it to the students. In matter of few days, one will be able to read Tibetan. It's very logical language, very, very, very logical, profound, and can express yourself precisely. Better than any other language. And then we have honorific. You say something in a respectful manner, and it's called honorific, showing respect to the second person or third person. And there is non-honorific, and then there is humiliating. It's very special. You make yourself humble in presence of some respectful person. So yeah, I did research on Tibetan language for 24 years. I enjoyed doing research on my language, and yeah, I hope my research will help preserve our language for many thousands of years. All these grammaticals are logically explained, like mathematics. It's said that mathematics is the easiest language because it has logic, it has reason. Likewise, Tibetan grammar can be explained logically, each and every grammar. So with these 3 volumes, I have completed my research, but then I might add few sentences or a chapter, and it will grow bigger when the second edition is published. All these 3 books put together has around 900 pages, and as I re-edit them later on, it would be like 1,000 pages of Tibetan grammar book. And yeah, so teaching Tibetan is my passion. I love doing research. I love teaching. I love my students, and my class is my world. This is how I beautify my classroom for the students and for myself. So if you buy these books for your children or your grandchildren, not only will it help preserve our language, it will financially help me write more books. I love reading books. I read lots and lots of books, and there are so many interesting Western stories. Like almost all of those stories have moral. My favorite book is The Time Machine, Hide, Christmas Carol, The City of Joy, Sherlock Holmes. Lots and lots of stories are there. So I would like to translate those books and write them in spoken Tibetan. If I get some money by selling my books and make things easier for the Tibetan children, some Tibetan writers, they make it as difficult as they can. Maybe they want to prove how scholarly he or she is. Like it's not easy to what should I say? For commoners, it's like saying to the people, commoners can't easily understand my book, by making it on purpose as difficult as it can be. And as a result, students get discouraged in learning Tibetan. And my book, all these 3 books, I made it as simple as it can be, to make it easy even for the children to understand the rules. So with this, I will have to stop this video here, and thank you for listening. about my books. See you again tomorrow.